Okay, so our first session, which is kicking off, is our opening keynote, The State of the Global Workplace and Why Wellbeing is the Power Behind Performance. And so for that, we have Claire de Carteret, who leads Gallup across Asia Pacific and has spent more than 16 years helping leaders challenge the status quo to build exceptional workplaces. She's passionate about creating cultures where people can do their best work, combining strengths-based leadership, strategic vision, and a deep belief that well-being is the power behind performance. Let's give a warm round of applause for Claire. Where is she? Claire, come on down. You need the clicker as well?
I do need the clicker as well. Thank you so much.
Right.
And I'm good with the mic.
You're mic'd up.
Thank you for the great introduction. Good morning, everybody. And I am so excited to be here. This is my favorite day of the year. Look at this view. It is magic. So huge thanks to Salesforce and Wellbeing at Work World. Okay, before we get into the state of the workplace, I'm going to ask you a question. I'd like you to imagine your life is a ladder where 10, the very top of the ladder, is the best possible life that you can live. And right at the bottom of the ladder, the bottom step, 0, is the worst possible life that you live. Where do you stand on that ladder today? Just keep that number in your mind for a moment. On which step on the ladder are you today? Now I'm going to ask you the same question, but I want you to imagine your life in 5 years' time. Where 10 is the best possible life, bottom of the ladder, 0 is the worst possible life. Where would you stand in 5 years' time from now? Keep that number in your mind. So if you are 7 or above today and 8 or above tomorrow, in 5 years' time, you are what we would call thriving. You're thriving in life. If you're 4 or below today and 4 or below tomorrow, in 5 years' time, you're suffering. And people in the middle are struggling. Now, I'm going to tell you more about what this means in a moment, but for now, I just want you to keep this number. You'll see soon that it's not just a personal number, but it's actually a financial predictor. A recent study out of Oxford by Professor Juan Emmanuel Deneve and his team studied over 1 million employee wellbeing surveys, and they found that those that had higher well-being had 30% more value on the stock market and over 2 billion more in annual profit as compared to their competitors. I'm going to cite all this research at the end. So when we're talking about well-being, we're not talking about yoga mats, free fruit, Friday get-togethers, although those things give people an individual well-being boost. But when we're talking about well-being at work, we're actually talking about well-being as a strategy for performance. We're talking about predictable metrics that demonstrate things like retention, performance, and profitability. And every single data point is a person, it's a human being. We call it the emotional economy at Gallup because it's predictive of societal, cultural, and economic outcomes. Every data point is a person. It's someone that wakes up in the morning feeling inspired to go and make a contribution or feeling weary to have another day of meaningless meetings. Because it's not organisations that perform, it's people. So a little bit of a shameless plug about Gallup, just to do some credibility building of where we get this data from. So Gallup does something called the World Poll. We've made a commitment to do this for 100 years. We're 15 years into it. And what we do is we go around to every single country in the world except for 3 that we can't enter. And we take a representative sample of the human experience. So we're asking them all sorts of questions that matter to the human experience, from food, shelter, safety. We've just released the Global Safety Report just 2 weeks ago. An interesting fact about that is we've got one of the safest countries in the world, but there's a huge gap between how safe women feel and how safe men feel. So that's a report to download if you want. But we're asking them about everything. And in our offices, we are then quite forensic at looking at the impact of life at work and the impact of work on a life well lived. That's our definition of well-being, a life well lived. And as you can see there, we have 3 of the UN's Sustainability Development Goals. So we're the official statistics for things like modern slavery, financial inclusion, and food security. But also you might be familiar with some of this other research that you may, like us, consume a lot of. The World Happiness Report, and just last week we released the Global Emotions Index. Negative emotions are on the rise. Spoiler alert for that one. So one of our biggest findings over the 15 years that we've been doing this world poll, where we go in and we get that representative sample of the human experience every year, is this thing called net thriving. And it's exactly that scale that we just did together. Imagine your life as a ladder, evaluate where you stand today and where you would stand in 5 years' time. It's called the Cantrell scale, or the self-anchoring scale, and it's highly predictive of behaviour and societal unrest. We call it the new stock price in the emotional economy. So 2 big macro examples to bring this to life. Traditional measures of prosperity in most cases are things like GDP per capita. So look at what was happening as we were tracking GDP per capita in the UK. Along comes the Brexit vote, and look at what was happening with net thriving, well-being. People's idea of what was going to happen in the future was declining. Their thriving score, the one that we did together, was going down. Another example, we have Egypt GDP, again, traditional measures of prosperity, looking quite stable, if not rising. Then we had the Arab uprisings begin, and look at what was happening to well-being. Now, we have many examples of this. I'm just showing you 2 to make a big point, is that when you look at this macro data, well-being is a blind spot for leaders. If we're not measuring it, or if we're not measuring the right things, we don't have a true picture around societal unrest, cultural crises, voting swinging behaviour, and hope is what we're measuring there. I believe that tomorrow will be better than today. I'm going to be talking about hope as well, so keep that in your mind. So my first point here is measure what we treasure, but make sure we're measuring the emotional economy, because people are driving our businesses forward. We call it the leadership blind spot. Gallup has a book on this. Dr. Daniel Kahneman was a senior scientist and Nobel laureate at Gallup. He was significant because he was the first to win outside of his field. So he was a psychologist, and he won in the field of economics in the year 2001. And what he was able to show is that humankind is 70% emotional in the decisions that we make. And that debunked neoclassical economic theory, which said that we line up all rational evidence and we make a decision based on rational factors. And we just know that's not true. We're largely emotional beings. We go to work with emotions, joy, sadness, worry, and we leave with those as well. And actually work can have a huge impact on that life well lived. So Dr. Daniel Kahneman, and that's 70% emotional. So how are we doing in Australia? And this is what I've been asked to talk about today. Net thriving. How are we doing? Well, we're 56% of our population are thriving. But what do you notice about this? It's going down. It's at a decade low. So while we have the highest thriving in the world, you can see us there, we've had a 4 percentage point decrease from last year to this year. This report was released in May of this year. So between 2023 data and 2024 data, released in the April or the May, we've dropped 4 percentage points, which is huge when we've got this big data lake that we're looking at. One other thing that we notice here is that managers are still higher thriving than individual contributors, although they're one of the biggest demographics to have plummeted. More stress on managers. Females have got higher thriving than males. But if we think about that pattern, this pattern, And you remember what I showed you about UK and the Egypt example. This is not tracking in the right direction for us. So something that we're really concerned about. Don't worry, this is not all going to be doom and gloom. I promise. At the same time as our life evaluation, our well-being is declining, our daily stress is on the rise. So look at that, where 49% of people experienced a lot of stress yesterday. And you can see that that is climbing. Here's where work comes into it. What do we do every day? We work. In fact, we spend a huge amount of our lifetime at work. That's not the only thing that factors into stress. We know that there are broader macro factors like cost of living, rate of change. We know that these things are really playing in as well. But this stress is one that we're keeping an eye on, because at the same time as well-being's going down, our stress is going up. So there's a bit of a clue there in the data about what we need to do about it. 81,390 is the average amount of hours that an Aussie works in their lifetime. Isn't that huge? I mean, the only thing that we do more than work is sleep. And yes, please raise your hand if you don't always get enough sleep. Yeah, most of us here, right? So work has got the ability to really influence that daily stress and a life well lived. So how are we doing at work? Well, in our 2025 State of the Global Workplace report, only 23% of Australians are engaged at work. That's less than a quarter of people. A whopping 65% of people are not engaged. These people are languishing, or they're ambivalent, or they're going to work, working for themselves, going through the motions. We don't have their heart. That we don't have that differentiating factor that helps with performance and productivity. They've got a mediocre relationship with the work, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that. And only 12% of people are actively disengaged. This is pretty good. The global average is 16. So we've got less really negative people coming to work every day than the global average, but still 12% of people are having a really lousy time at work. Do these numbers surprise anyone? No? What a whopping opportunity to move that 65% of people that come to work, they're languishing, they go through the motions, to optimise those people, give them a boost, have them thriving at work. Two other big data points I wanted to show you about the current state of our workplace. 72% of Aussies say that now is a good time to find a new job. That is also the highest in the world compared to every other market that we look at. So now is a good time to find a job. That's curious, right? 42% of our workforce are actively looking to leave. So we've got a retention risk here. We've got, if I connect the dots, we've got people whose well-being is declining, their stress is going up, they're not super engaged at work, they're languishing, they're ambivalent. Our productivity is stagnating as a country. They're saying it might be a good time to find a job, and half of them, almost, are actively looking for a new job. So this poses a great challenge to leaders. Now, we think it's got something to do with how people relate to work. We know that work can be a community where you can make a contribution using your strengths. It can be fulfilling, developmental, boosting, and it can impact a life well lived. In fact, it can impact all 5 of the wellbeing elements: financial, social, community, contributional, purpose of work, and physical, if you've got a great workplace. If you've read our first book on wellbeing, you'll know that we did cortisol testing throughout the day, and we measured stress as people interacted with their work day. Now, does anyone know when they felt the most stressed? Any guesses?
Sunday night.
Sunday scaries is a real thing, yes. It was actually when they interacted with their bosses. Any bosses in the room? Or coaches, leaders? And so we've got a heavy responsibility there. We just cause stress just by sheer fact that we're the manager. But we know it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, if you've got a great coaching manager, then you're fulfilled, developmental, stretched, challenged, clarity of feedback. So this is the emotional economy in Australia, but this is what it looks like in best practice organisations. 70% of people are thriving at work. There are many organisations in Australia that are doing this really well. So that's the average, but that doesn't mean it's what we should accept. Average could be the best of the worst or the worst of the best. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want anybody to go to work and just have an average experience every day, let alone a lousy one. And that's why we're all here. Another point on productivity. Our government is looking into this. We have a productivity problem. Our labour productivity is at 2016 levels. So that means we're working more hours and we're producing less as a country. And this is a concern for us when it comes to ambition, competitiveness as a nation, our younger generations coming into the workforce. What is going on where you think about that 65% of people also just kind of plodding along, not super productive, not passionate. We can do better. Okay, a little bit of a quiz time. Is anyone on TikTok here? TikTok people, yes? Okay. We're showing our age now, the ones that are not on TikTok. Okay, let's have a look at this side of TikTok, which is called Work Talk, which essentially is a forum for people to go and have a really good whinge about their workplace and their manager. Raise your hand if you know what this means. Act your wage. Yeah, what does it mean?
Do what you get paid for and not more.
Do what you get paid for and not more. Perfect, thank you. Who knows what quietly quitting is? What does it mean?
It's just like doing the minimum.
Do the bare minimum. Yeah, I'm out of here, but I'm still receiving a paycheck, right? What's corporate clownery? Anyone know? This is where they go on, I say they, I mean, this is where people go on and complain about pointless meetings, silly agendas, meetings for meetings' sake, anything that's just corporate clownery, right? Boss X, what do we think that one means? Self-explanatory, that one. Yeah, I guess it's like the ick. Remote work rebellion. Have you heard of this one? It's where there's a mandate to return to the office, but the people are fighting back. They are not. Quit talk, again, self-explanatory. Lazy girl jobs, quite similar to act your wage, and also very similar to bare minimum Mondays. So the point here is that this is the relationship that most people think is acceptable to work. So they're coming to work, and work to them means toil, labour, exertion, drudgery, all those negative things. This is what the dictionary says. So and if you've heard me speaking before, I'm trying to start a bit of a global movement where we change the word work and we reframe work to be about contribution, about a place where we get developed, where we're part of something. We work on hard things together, using our strengths, and we achieve goals together. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if everyone got to work in that way? All right, so what are we going to do about all of this? We know employees want a great job and a great life, and we believe that if we get the work part right, it boosts a life well lived. We know it, we've studied it. There are 12 factors that every individual needs from their team, from their manager at work. We call these the immutable laws of work, or the Q12 if you're familiar with it. These are workplace needs, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are what we come into work every day. We need clarity of expectations. We need materials and equipment to do our job right. We need recognition. We need care. How many people have had a boss that really cares about them? You'd walk over coals for them. That sense of care elicits so much goodwill. Care as a human. We need to have freedom of voice. So our opinions need to count. We need to be able to have a perspective and feel like it gets listened to. We need to feel connected to the mission of the company. The beautiful thing about this framework is it's a measure of engagement, so therefore it's a proxy for performance and productivity, but it also then becomes a framework for conversations. And if you look at those same conditions, the Q12 conditions, representing the employee need and therefore the manager behaviour. So if we know that these are the things that matter to excellence, to high performing, to high thriving teams, which we do because we looked at 80,000 different work groups, half of them were high thriving, connected, engaged, the other half were mediocre, not connected, not engaged. And these are the conditions that were consistent and prevalent with the high thriving teams. So if we know that these are the conditions, the clue to the behaviour for the manager is in the question. So if my team's low on recognition, I need to value them more, I need to recognise them more, I need to acknowledge. So it's basically hear me, see me, develop me, care about me, all these things that great managers do every day. And guess what? It's not just about meeting human needs at work. It's because every person is a data point. When those needs are met, they're thriving at work. They're more productive. And it leads to these kind of positive outcomes. When we compare teams that are high thriving in the top quartile of our database to those at the very bottom, these are the factors that differentiate them. Positive outcomes and reduction of negative outcomes, all things that leaders want to accomplish, right? So, who can guess then, connecting the dots, what the number one manager skill is? Empathy? Yep, that's a great one. Yes, conversations. And you can show empathy through the conversations. The number one manager skill is conversations. When it comes to engagement, when it comes to well-being, it's not something that can be replaced without human contact. It really is a conversation, a meaningful conversation that makes the difference. And the exact formula that we've studied, and if you write anything down today, please make it this. It's we all need one meaningful conversation a week at work. One conversation a week that's meaningful. And a meaningful conversation doesn't have to be a long one. In fact, you can have a powerful conversation in just a minute as long as there's intentionality there, it's caring, it's listening, and it's performance orientated. So think about now the best leader you've ever known. When you've got that person clearly in your mind, what was it about them that made them an exceptional leader? Just start calling out characteristics. Curiosity, listen. Vision, care. Growth-minded. Clarity. Empowering. Enthusiastic, authentic. All of these things, do you recognise what they are? They're emotional factors. No one ever says the best leader I ever had a double degree or an MBA from Harvard or was a wizard at Excel pivot tables, right? The best leader we've ever had is one that is human and connects with us to meet those emotional factors. We asked 56,000 people what they needed from great leaders. And there were 4 things: hope, trust, stability, and compassion. We call these the 4 needs of followers. I'm going to focus on hope because we started with hope. Hope is ideas and energy for the future. And look at that. 56% of people need hope right now. They need to know that tomorrow is going to be better than today and that we've got the resources to make it happen. So what do we mean by hope? Goals for the future, ideas to get there, pathways, and energy around it. And so as leaders, we want to create that hope by talking about the future, painting a clear vision, helping people see that they can get there. That's so powerful if you remember those big graphs that I showed you right at the beginning. And guess what? Leaders create hope through meaningful conversations. So let me wrap us up here. There's a lot that I've shown here, but we want the takeaways to be these things. Track emotions as lead indicators. It's called the emotional economy. We need to measure what matters. Wellbeing isn't a perk, it's a performance strategy. Organisations don't perform, people do. Recognise engagement as an infrastructure. When the right measures are in place, this is not abstract. This is about productivity and performance and human needs at work. We have to remember to create enthusiasm for the future. If people don't see things getting better, they won't stick around. And one meaningful conversation a week. I hope you have a wonderful next couple of days. Any Gallup people, please raise your hand. Come and connect with us if you want to continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much.